Finally, Minnesota Vikings football is back in full swing, so here are our top 3 camp battles to watch, plus our potential roster bubble players.
And stay to the end to find out who we think is going to be this year's Ivan Pace Jr.
The top battle to watch at the most important position, Sam Darnold comes in as the early favorite to win the job, but don't count out the future of the franchise, jjmccarthy, as he's already getting glowing reviews from his teammates. So Darnold's going to need to watch his back during camp. Playing into his favor is this is the most talented roster he has ever had throughout his career, and Kevin O'Connell is adamant that McCarthy will not see the field till he is ready, but that could be sooner rather than later knowing JJ McCarthy's history. This is going to be a fun one to keep an eye on.
The Vikings' interior offensive line is, well, it's not great, but yet we have a 3-person battle for 2 starting guard spots. In Darnold, you have a converted tackle who has gained favor in the front office and coaching staff as he was given a pretty hefty contract this offseason. Ingram is a quasi-draft pick who has had a very up-and-down career to this point, but has managed to hold his starting spot since his rookie year. And Reisner is a fan favorite who returns after being a solid midseason addition last season. 3 players, 2 spots. This will be one to watch.
Our final camp battles to highlight come from special teams, where at kicker we have 2 new faces in XFL leg John Parker Romo, as well as 6th round pick Alabama assassin Will Reichard, who looked great throughout minicamp. At punter, the Vikings brought in some competition after Ryan Wright did have a down second season in Seth Vernon, who also impressed throughout minicamp. It'll be interesting to see what happens at these 2 spots. Hold up, stop. Before we continue on with our top roster bubble players, do not forget smash like and hit subscribe.
Let's get back to the video.
There was hope that Lewis Dean would be a solid player at the safety position and the eventual heir apparent to Harrison Smith, but after a nasty leg injury his rookie season, and reportedly he hasn't quite been able to get a grasp on the Flores offense, if he doesn't have a huge training camp this year, he may find himself on the outside looking in, especially with the emergence of Theo Jackson.
Next, let's stay with the same draft class and talk about Andrew Booth and a Caleb Evans. Booth was a 2nd round pick that seemed like a steal, but never seemed to live up to his initial hype, though he did look solid in limited time last season. And in a more surprising player in Evans, who was the starting cornerback in 2023, he never took the step forward in coverage that the coaching staff was hoping for, as you can see by his 54.9 PFF grade.
Another player who never quite stepped up as expected is former 3rd round outside linebacker Pat Jones, who showed some flashes throughout training camp and preseason last year, but that didn't equate to playing time during the regular season. With the young talent the Vikings have at the position, he may be aged out.
Last year's 5th round pick Jaren Hall started 2 games while Kirk was on the shelf. Though he wasn't really given a fair shot, it did not go well. With the team drafting JJ McCarthy and still having Nick Mullins on the roster, Hall feels like the odd man out, but seems like a likely practice squad player.
We all know the Ivan Pace story, right? Undrafted free agent turned week 1 starter and fan favorite. But do we think there's an undrafted free agent in this year's class that could follow in his footsteps?
Here are our top 3 players we think could do it, but to us, number 1 stands out above the rest.
Number 3.
At number 3, an athletic freak from Air Force who scored a ridiculous 9.92 RAS, Bo Reichter, a guy who we believe will be a fan favorite throughout camp, but with how stacked the outside linebacker group is, it may be tough for him to find a role.
Number 2.
At number 2, we got Gabriel Murphy, who makes the most sense to be this year's Ivan Pace, coming off an 8-sack season with UCLA, and like Pace, was projected to be a day 2 pick, but fell out of the draft completely due to issues with his size. But again, it's going to be difficult for him to find footing in a crowded outside linebacker room that includes 1st round pick Dallas Turner and last year's UDFA gem Andre Carter.
Number 1.
Our number 1 guy is no other than Dwight McGlothern. He was projected to be a 5th round pick, but because of some athletic limitations, he also went undrafted, even though he had an insane 91.3 overall PFF grade. We think he could end up being a good player at a position where there is room for him to make an impact, especially with Blackman going down with an injury.